This is the episode that ties everything together. Annex A is the control catalog at the heart of ISO 42001. 38 controls across 7 categories from A.5 through A.11. Every other episode in the series has been building toward the question, what specific controls do I need to implement? This episode answers that question directly, systematically, and practically. By the end of this episode, you will understand what each control requires, what implementation looks like in practice, and what evidence an auditor expects to see. You will also understand how to build your statement of applicability, the key document that maps your organization's control decisions. Let's walk through Annex A from the beginning. Annex A is normative, meaning it is a required part of the standard, not optional guidance. It contains 38 controls organized into 7 categories: AI policy, organizational controls, human resources controls, AI system lifecycle controls, supply chain controls, operations controls, and access controls. The critical thing to understand about Annex A is that not every control applies to every organization. Your applicability is determined by your risk assessment, your organizational context, and your role as a developer, provider, or user of AI. Controls that are not applicable must be excluded, but those exclusions must be documented and justified in your Statement of Applicability. The Statement of Applicability, commonly called the SOA, is one of the most important documents in your certification evidence. It lists every Annex A control, states whether it applies, gives the justification for applicability or exclusion, and references the implementation status. If a control is applicable but not yet implemented, your SOA should reflect that gap, along with your plan and timeline for closing it. Gaps in the SOA are not automatically disqualifying, but unexplained gaps are. A.5 contains 2 controls, and they are foundational. A.5.1 requires an AI use policy, a documented policy that defines how AI is used within the organization, what uses are permitted and prohibited, who is accountable, and what principles govern AI decision-making. We covered the content requirements in episode 3. The implementation evidence for A.5.1 includes the policy document itself, the management approval record, the communication evidence, and the distribution record showing who has received and acknowledged the policy. A.5.2 requires AI policy review. The policy must be reviewed at defined intervals and when significant changes occur. The implementation evidence is the review record. When was it reviewed? Who reviewed it? What changes were considered? What decisions were made? And what version resulted from the review? Policy review is one of the first things an auditor checks because a policy that has never been reviewed is a policy that is not actively managed. A point 6 covers 4 controls that define your governance architecture. A point 6.1 requires a formally established AI governance structure, not an informal understanding of who oversees AI, but a documented, resourced, and operating governance model. The evidence includes the terms of reference for your AI governance committee, the attendance records for committee meetings, and the decision log from those meetings. A .6.2 requires that roles and responsibilities are clearly defined and communicated. The evidence includes your RACI matrix, job descriptions that include AI governance responsibilities, and records of role assignments. A .6.3 requires segregation of duties, preventing any single individual from having unchecked control over an entire AI system from development through operation. The evidence is your RACI design and the operational records showing that the segregation is enforced. A.6.4 requires management responsibilities, AI governance topics on management agendas, AI risks included in management reporting, and resource decisions made by management rather than delegated entirely to technical teams. The evidence is your management meeting records, your governance performance reports, and the resource allocation decisions that demonstrate management is actively engaged rather than nominally sponsoring. A.7 mirrors the HR security controls familiar from ISO 27001 but applies them in the AI governance context. A.7.1 covers background verification, ensuring that staff with access to sensitive AI systems or data are appropriately vetted. The scope of verification should be proportionate to the sensitivity of access and documented in your HR procedures. A.7.2 covers terms and conditions of employment. AI governance obligations should be reflected in employment contracts, offer letters, and contractor agreements. This creates a legal foundation for enforcing your AI policy. An employee who violates your AI use policy needs to be subject to consequences, and those consequences need to be grounded in their employment terms. A.7.3 covers disciplinary process, what happens when AI policy is violated. This does not need to be a separate AI-specific disciplinary process. It means your existing disciplinary framework explicitly covers AI policy violations. A.7.4 covers awareness and training, role-based, documented, recurring, and evidenced. The audit evidence for A.7.4 includes your training curriculum, the attendance records, any competence assessments conducted, and the outcome of those assessments. A.8 is the largest and most complex control category in Annex A. 8 controls covering the full AI system lifecycle. A.8.1 requires an AI system inventory, a register of all in-scope AI systems with fields covering system purpose, owner, data inputs, risk classification, and lifecycle stage. A.8.2 requires an AI system impact assessment conducted before deployment and updated when material changes occur. A.8.3 covers data management, quality, lineage, privacy, security, and retention controls for data used in AI systems. We covered this in detail in episode 6. A.8.4 covers AI system design and development, governance checkpoints, and documentation requirements during the build phase. A.8.5 covers validation and testing, bias testing, robustness testing, security testing, and performance validation with documented results. The implementation evidence for A.8.4 and A.8.5 is the design documentation for each AI system. The requirements document, the ethical review record, the testing plan, the test results, and the deployment decision record that shows what was tested, what was found, what decisions were made, and who approved deployment. A.8.6 covers AI system deployment, controlled, documented rollout with access controls and a rollback plan. The evidence is your deployment checklist, the completed checklist for each deployment, the access control configuration, and the rollback procedure. A.8.7 covers AI system monitoring, KPIs, monitoring systems, alert procedures, and regular assessment. The evidence is your monitoring dashboard configuration, alert records, and the reports generated from monitoring activities. A.8.8 covers maintenance, change management for all AI system changes. Every model update, parameter change, or data source modification goes through your documented change management process. The evidence is your change log, change requests, risk assessments, test results, approvals, and deployment records. And integrated with A.8.2, Annex C of ISO 42001 provides impact consideration dimensions, individual, group, and societal impacts that your impact assessments should evaluate. Annex C maps to ISO 42005, giving you the methodological connection between the management system requirement and the assessment methodology. Use Annex C as your impact assessment checklist to ensure you are covering all required dimensions. We covered the supply chain governance detail in episode 9. From an Annex A perspective, A.9.1 requires supplier assessment, documented risk evaluation before engaging any AI supplier. The evidence is your vendor assessment questionnaire, the completed assessments, and the risk decisions made on the basis of those assessments. A.9.2 requires a supply chain risk management program, not individual assessments in isolation, but a coordinated program with oversight at the AIMS level. The evidence includes your supply chain risk register, your supplier monitoring schedule, and the records of supplier reviews conducted. A.9.3 specifically covers third-party AI services, the SaaS, API, and platform services through which AI capability is consumed. The evidence for A.9.3 includes your inventory of third-party AI services, the controls applied to each service, and the contractual protections in place. A.10 covers 4 operational controls. A.10.1 requires documented operational procedures, the work instructions that staff follow when operating AI systems. Evidence, the procedures themselves, evidence of distribution, and records showing they are being followed in practice. A.10.2 covers change management, formal process for all AI system changes. Evidence, your change management procedure and the completed change records. A.10.3 covers capacity management, ensuring AI infrastructure scales with demand without compromising governance. A.10.4 covers backup and recovery. AI models, training data, configurations, and audit logs are covered. A.11 covers 3 access control requirements. A.11.1 requires an access control policy specific to AI systems. A.11.2 requires user access management, provisioning, review, and revocation processes. A.11.3 requires system access monitoring, detecting and investigating anomalous access to AI systems. The evidence across A.11 includes your access control policy, the user access review records, the access log monitoring configuration, and the alert and investigation records from anomaly detection.